us now. Dean of the University of Professional Studies Law Faculty, Ernest Kofi, finds nothing wrong in the decision by the Office of the Special Prosecutor to update the nation on cases being handled and the frustrations in prosecuting them. The OSP Kisi Jabing, at a news conference this week, accused some judges of bias in handling cases filed by the Office of the Special Prosecutor. The comments have generated discussions, questioning the country's commitment to fight corruption. Speaking on Newsfile, UPSA Law Faculty Dean Ernest Kofi says the OSP must fix some challenges hindering his progress.
I strongly support what the OSP is doing. The OSP is an office which is involved in public interest litigation. I think it's important for us to understand that public interest litigation is not just another regular litigation. It is involved in the defense of the public interest, and when you're involved in the defense of the public interest, you ought to give feedback to the persons who are interested in the litigation involved or in the prosecution involved. The OSP, therefore, occupies an office which not only is novel, but an office which was called into being by the public, so to speak. This is a matter that dominated political conversation for many years. I do not see and understand what the reason is that after having been established, the OSP should operate in private. Mind you, we have to bear this in mind, that the OSP is interested in public facilitation of its work. And so if an office is interested in the public facilitation of its work, that office invariably would have to engage that public. It is when the OSP speaks to the public that the public can be aware of the extent to which the OSP's work is progressing, what the difficulties and challenges are, and if the public thinks that there are any circumstances of complementing the OSP's work, the public may, so to speak, come out and engage. So I think the OSP is doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Justice is not, it shouldn't be a private business. You know, lawyers have traditionally said this, that look, let's keep some of these things quiet. The legal actors who are supposed to be quiet are known. Jurors and judges themselves, they speak through the bench. The people who are supposed to be quiet are there. Indeed, lawyers who are involved in particular cases. And I've heard lawyers on radio, and I think these days the media funds that, but it's quite unprofessional. And that I totally disagree with lawyers who do that. In other words, lawyers who are involved in cases in court, coming out of court and then literally continuing the litigation on radio or on TV, you know, and basically arguing against each other publicly. That I think is a bit unprofessional. But that is not what the OSP is doing. What the OSP is doing is to give public feedback on specific developments on cases involving matters before him. So I do not have any difficulty at all with the fact that he's giving updates or periodic updates of happenings in court. Well, I mean, some will argue that the office of the OSP is perhaps one of the most difficult offices anybody can occupy in public service in Ghana. And the reason for that is that it is an office that requires the level of facilitation which ordinarily doesn't obtain in our criminal justice system. The OSP is supposed to be a forensically led office, fundamentally speaking. And forensics, as we all know, forensic investigation in Ghana is still very much rudimentary. You are investigating offenses that are essentially consensual in character, offenses in which parties are collaborators and cooperative in terms of their behaviors.
While former Member of Parliament for Tamale Central, Inusa Fuseni, says the OSP must be ready to face some challenges in its desire to put corrupt officials in jail.
I have tremendous sympathy for the OSP. It was a difficult legislation. It was difficult because the first challenge we anticipated actually when we passed the law was that someone would carry us to court and say that we had done an unconstitutional act. But you see, why didn't anybody go to court? Because there's consensus by the whole country that we have tackled the canker of corruption. There are only two things that are essential in defeating corruption: disclosures and transparency. So, yes, the special prosecutor used unconventional means to vent his frustrations, his lamentations, the obstacles that are being put on his way. He says it's novel. It's true, and indeed it's novel. He's not been aided because he's a lawyer. But you must understand, and Professor Abotsi knows him very well, that he was a diligent academic, very hard-working lawyer. He's been put in an office, and now his competence is being called into question. He's fighting to protect his own reputation and integrity. The office itself has great difficulty. I was the first person to criticize his appointment. Because I know what corruption can do. Corruption can be deadly. Corruption can be destructive, not only to the economy, but to the individual. Several anti-corruption fighters have been killed. Judges, journalists have borne the highest brunt. Corrupt people, killed them with impunity. The Malta case is still pending. So when he was appointed, I thought he had a very young family. And that family itself was now vulnerable. He himself was vulnerable. I didn't anticipate and think that a political party that made it an issue in which Ghanaians bought into will work to frustrate the operationalization of the office. I didn't think that would be his problem. But now that is what is happening.
For political scientist and development fellow with the Center for Democratic Development, Dr. John Osai-Kwapon is worried about the development and how it will further dampen the confidence of the public in the judiciary.
This fight against corruption is much tougher than anyone can imagine. That is going to take a long time, etc., etc. So you sensitize the public to how difficult this fight against corruption is. The part where I disagree with the special prosecutor is, going into the specifics of, particular rulings and his disagreements with that, but also couching in a language that seems to suggest that there is some sort of concerted effort on the part of the judiciary to make his work difficult. That I think is very worrying. And it's also very worrying because the judiciary is not enjoying the best of public perception at this moment. You mentioned Afrobarometer, so I have to throw in Afrobarometer once again. But if you look at the question of trust in our courts of law and the perception in our courts of law based on the Afrobarometer data, the courts are not enjoying the best of public perceptions. And you need, and again, the level of trust is also at an all-time low. So when you combine all of these things, where you need to get citizens to find ways to repose or regain their confidence and trust in this very important institution, then it becomes even more worrying when the special prosecutor comes out and gives this press conference and say the kinds of things that may reinforce some of the suspicions or the mistrust that citizens are already having, in the court. And it is not every time that you would expect to, quote unquote, win a case in a court of law. For me, win or lose, so long as the institution followed all the right, procedures and dealt with the case in a fair and impartial manner, then we must respect the outcome.